Hi, Ani. Would you let me know if you can hear me? Oh. Mm-mm.
Digital dementia. And this is a term in healthcare that says because of the high reliance on technology, we don't have to remember hardly anything. How many of you growing up used to know how many phone numbers did you know growing up? How many? A ton, right? Dozens, right? You still remember some of those numbers, right? But how many current numbers do you know today? 3. And that's a lot, right? And I don't want to memorize 500 phone numbers, right? But it should be concerning we've lost the ability to remember one, or a PIN number, or a passcode, or a seed phrase, right? Or something just told us, right? Or a conversation of what we're going to say, or somebody's name.
They called him the boy.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you can hear me, please enter 1 in the chat. If you cannot hear me, please enter 2 in the chat. Yay! I restarted my computer and it took forever. So, and then I was having some technical difficulties and we're back on track. So thank you for confirming that. Okay. So we're going to get started today. I'm going to go over some updates to the current assignments in Top Hat, as well as some clarification on the final assignment for the semester, which will be a documentary and some questions. And this is a change to the syllabus because initially I had very ambitious plans to try out an assignment that I had never done before in this class. That was a collective kind of class, what's called participatory action research, because it was going to involve ASI and attending meetings and all of that, but we are not doing that. So it is a change to the syllabus. And then we'll go into the presentations, which we have 2 today, and finish out with an activity to close out the current unit in Top Hat. Or actually, it's a segue into what the unit that we're going to do a deeper dive into starting on Tuesday in class. So first, I want to show you the announcement section of our Canvas course shell, where I did post an announcement earlier this morning that you also would have received as an individual email. And because we have been having our mid-semester, our presentations, which we only are having 1 presentation assignment for this semester, we have not been able to go into the new unit. And so I have extended the deadline to the current unit participation assignments in Top Hat for the Stand State Student Activism unit. So instead of those assignments being due tomorrow by end of day, they will be due by next Friday at end of day. We will be doing introducing the next unit starting on Tuesday in class. And so then that unit assignments, those assignments will be due on May 10th. And then of course, the final unit will be contemporary activism, which will be the last Top Hat assignments as far as aside from the documentary film assignment, which I have actually also uploaded in Top Hat because it's just easier to do it that way. So we just have 2 more units, including, 3 more units, including this one for the semester. And then we will have that documentary film, which you will have 24 questions to answer on a documentary on the 1999 strike for ethnic studies at UC Berkeley. So literally 30 years after the longest student strike in US history of undergraduate students, which was 1968 to 1969. In 1999, there was another strike at UC Berkeley to maintain ethnic studies, and that will be in place of a final exam. So I'm going to just show you in our Top Hat course platform that I have extended. You can see here that I had to restart my computer. So we're going to do this right now because for whatever reason, those changes did not carry over. I'm going to unassign all, then I'm going to reassign, and the due date, oh no, that is correct, is May 3rd, not April 26th. So that is correct. So you can see here that the participation assignments for the Stand State Student Activism Unit are now due next Friday instead of this Friday. And after the presentations, we are going to open up the CC Pudo Student Activism for Latinx Studies at UCLA in the early 90s, which does have 5 reading multiple choice questions associated with it. I do want to show you before we finish out our presentations today that I have uploaded in the module sections of our Canvas course shell, the part B readings. Now, the Si Se Pudo is actually 1990 to 1993, student activism and the Chicano studies movement at UCLA. We will not be getting to these other readings, I don't think, but we are definitely going to be getting to this one. So I do just want to show you that I have added those readings on our Canvas course shell in the module section. So today we have 2 remaining presentations, and that we're going to start out with a small group presentation and then wrap up with an individual presentation. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop the share in a moment. So Diego, Brandon, and Luke. So Diego, Brandon, and Luke are going to go open up today's presentations. And I just would like to know if you would like me to project your presentation from my screen, or if you would like, one of you all would like to project it from your device.
Could you project it?
Yes, so I will see.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Did one
I emailed it to you through slides.
did you send it to my Stan State email or my Gmail?
Yes, it was your Stan email.
Okay, I'll look it up. Here we go. Okay. It does say that I'm going to need access. So if you could just make sure that you have given me, unfortunately, I just learned this actually last week. I can't access the presentations unless I have editor permission. So what you would do is if you go to the presentation, you go to this blue icon, and then what you're going to see first is restricted. So what you're going to do is click on that arrow, choose anyone with the link, then go to where it says viewer and just choose editor, copy the link, and then you would go to your email and then just, or I don't know if you would just need to change it to editor. So permission, because for whatever reason, I can't project it if I only have viewer or commenter position permissions.
Okay, I just changed it and I sent you a link in direct messages in
Okay,
Zoom. See if that
thank
works.
Okay, that worked. So we can hear you. Let me just get out of that. I need to be signed into this one. Okay, we can hear you very well. So I'm going to mute myself and then I will just, navigate through the slides.
Okay, thank you. Our topic was universal healthcare movement by me, Diego, Luke, and Brandon. Okay, so what is the issue? Healthcare is a universal need that's just kind of blocked by like absurd prices, like insurance prices and just medical bills in general. The movement began in the early 1900s for like specifically insurance, but there's a more modern movement that's specifically just for healthcare. And it's honestly really important to understand that most people can't afford healthcare like nowadays because of like increased housing, the cost of food, just other general expenses. People just can't focus on healthcare at the moment.
All right, can you guys hear me well? All right, so we have a pros and cons slide here about the universal healthcare. And the main benefits are that it would take a lot of stress off the general public and help people in need who wouldn't have otherwise had the help. And the main negatives would be increased taxes for everyone, which nobody really wants to hear. But having healthcare globalized may lead to a decrease in the quality of it so that they could get it across for the large population. Next, yeah.
Okay, how is this issue addressed? This issue is addressed through political campaigns where politicians and parties make universal health care a big part of their promises when trying to get elected. They may advocate for special policies such as single-payer healthcare, public option plans, or healthcare reforms. There's also a lot of protests for this issue. They Supporters may organize marches, sit-ins, or other forms of direct action to demand healthcare reforms. And in the future, we hope to see universal healthcare become a reality, ensuring everyone can access medical care without financial worries. Government should prioritize their healthcare as a basic human right while working to implement inclusive systems that leave no one behind.
Okay, so COVID's impact. I feel like none of us really like realize like the real impact of expenses as we really should. I mean, at least I wasn't that aware because, my parents were kind of they're trying to protect me from like the actual cost of everything and like what was going on at the time because I don't know, they didn't want it to really affect me in a negative way or affect my mental health, which I guess worked, but I really wish I would have been able to see in that moment to see like what tragedies were going on. Like people were losing their jobs. So they weren't able to afford healthcare or anything because they had to focus on buying food and, supporting their family through other ways. And if universal healthcare were a thing, we wouldn't even have to worry about that. We would just be able to worry about paying our mortgage, food, whatever. You can take trips to Disneyland. But COVID really kind of destroyed that and made it significantly more difficult to pay for even minor hospital bills. Our reasoning for choosing this topic is because I feel like a lot of people just ignore it and be like, "Oh, the taxes are going to be too high. It's too much money." Like if you go to the hospital and you don't have insurance, you're going to be paying like $100,000 for a simple operation. And it's honestly just pay the taxes if it really comes down to it. Like it's going to significantly benefit our society. It's not just going to help us; it's going to help our future generations as well. Honestly, and it also makes me see the flaw of a capitalist market, which are like pharmaceutical companies that overcharge you for specific medicines because in other countries they're significantly cheaper, and over here in the US they charge you like $400 for like insulin even, and when it's super cheap in like Europe. Anyways, yeah, that was our presentation, and then we have our sources on the last slide.
Thank you. Let's show our appreciation for Luke, Diego, and Brandon in the chat or by using our Zoom reactions. So thank you. This is such an important and critical topic. It impacts the vast majority of people in the US. Literally, when we talk about, we got to do the intersectionality exercise in class on Tuesday, but we talk about across socioeconomic status, ethnicity, race, gender, everything, right? Everything. I think it was also such an important addition or component to really speak to the impact of COVID. And I want to hone in here on what you articulate, that COVID not only impacted all of the healthcare centers worldwide, but specifically in the US, it actually highlighted and it exacerbated already existing inequities and severe weaknesses in our system because so much of our healthcare has been privatized, and also so much of it was, the issue was we had minimal equipment, even less equipment than other countries throughout the world because of constantly cutting corners in terms of cost in order to increase profit at the expense of people's lives. I mean, literal lives. The other point that you brought up is this issue. I think this is so important to show a balanced perspective in terms of the benefits and possible disadvantages. Now, when it comes to taxes, and this is where it ties into the point that you made about how the issue is being addressed, we've really got to not only think about, does it really take more taxes, or does it take a reallocation in the way that taxes are being distributed? So the US Congress just passed a bill of $26 billion to Israel. So this was on Wednesday. And it had to be, and it passed with an overwhelming majority. Now, this is really insane. This $26 billion is our money. It's taxpayer money. 26 billion. There have already been billions of dollars already sent to Israel. But how are you going to send 26 billion for Israel and for humanitarian aid in Gaza and other places? That's a contradiction in terms. So it's trying to have it both ways. This was on Wednesday. That's $26 billion of taxpayer money. Then a day ago, Congress sent 95 more. They're sending $95 billion more. There have already been, last year, there was like $1 billion, at least $1 billion that had already been sent to Ukraine of US taxpayer money. But that's where the government gets the money from the taxpayers. That's our money. And it was something at least like, what was it? At least $1 billion. Nobody knew what happened to it. There's no way that nobody doesn't know what happens to $1 billion worth of money. So there's corruption, there's some, right? But then another $95 billion, and this is primarily to Ukraine, and then Israel's included in this bill too, and Taiwan. But again, so you just had $26 billion of taxpayer dollars, but that included Israel, 95 billion, that includes Israel. So one of the main ways that campaigns are launched is also, do we need to increase taxes? Or do we need to change the way that taxpayer dollars are allocated? So really important topic, and some really key points. So we're gonna wrap up with Celeste. And I saw, Celeste, that you just sent me your presentation. And I'm going to download it to present it, actually. Oh my gosh. My computer had to get updated. So, okay, hopefully this won't take too long. So, let me just get this here. Okay. And then Celeste, I will mute myself and you can get started whenever you're ready.
Okay. So my presentation is on child labor among migrants. What is child labor? Child labor is a human rights issue that we've been dealing with for years, and unfortunately, more years to come. It refers to the exploitation of children in the workforce, especially those who migrate alongside their families across the country and borders. Majority of the time, the migrant children are forced to become migrant workers under child labor. They work through hazardous conditions, face discrimination, and get paid way below a living wage. What causes child labor? Some causes of child labor can be financial hardships. Some children might be used as some source of income for their family if they're struggling financially. Another cause can be lack of legal protection. Migrant children often lack legal status or proper documentation in the destination country. That makes them more vulnerable to exploitation, as they may fear reporting abuses. Another cause of it can be either cultural or language barriers. These barriers can make them getting an education and accessing other opportunities challenging. It limits their opportunities, subjecting them to dangerous and toxic work environments. And lastly, the biggest cause of it can also be discrimination. Migrant children may face discrimination based on their migrant status, ethnicity, or nationality, which can further limit their opportunities and increase their vulnerability to exploitation. Excuse me. Carolina's story. Carolina is a 15-year-old girl who was found to be working for a company you've definitely heard of, Cheerios. She worked packaging for Cheerios. a job where the employees were constantly getting and amputating their fingers. She is originally from Guatemala, but decided to leave her country for the sake of her. In her village, they were left with no food, no water, and no jobs after the pandemic. Carolina got in contact with a distant aunt who took her into her home, but also assured Carolina that she can't take care of her like she takes care of her own children, as her aunt doesn't have much money to support all of them. 15-year-old Carolina did her best to manage her 8-hour shifts at the Cheerios factory and her education at the same time. She eventually started missing school because she was becoming exhausted and sick. Just 15 years old. When most of us were 15 years old, the only thing we worried about was school. How is child labor being addressed? How is it being resolved? Unfortunately, this human rights issue hasn't been resolved and is barely being taken seriously after Hannah Dreyer's report for the New York Times. Her article went viral as she spent 2 years researching and uncovering all secrets of child labor in the United States. Biden's response to this is to strengthen programs to aid child labor and migrants, as well as overhauling federal agencies. Since Dreyer's article, more investigations are being done in order to unfold all illegal acts of child labor in the United States. What do I hope to see done differently? In the near future, I hope to see laws that protect migrant children being enforced more and strengthened in order to protect them from being exploited and discriminated against. I hope their right to an education, free healthcare, and a safe environment is ensured. I hope that the root cause of poverty is found and the government and people come up with solutions in order to save these children and prevent them from struggling on their own. I hope that they develop and implement better migration policies that take into account the specific needs and vulnerabilities of migrant children while prioritizing their protection and well-being. I hope these children are provided with more support and security. And I chose this topic to create a presentation on child labor migrants for the reason that I don't see much coverage of this. I wanted to bring more awareness to the issue and hopefully inspire others to do their research on child labor migrants. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. I think it's especially powerful that you integrate the actual experience of an individual child who is too young, according to US child labor laws that have been on the books for decades since the progressive era movement of the 1930s, where child labor was widespread in the country, especially again of migrant children at that time in the early 20th century who were overwhelmingly from Southern and Eastern Europe and Ireland. And so there are laws on the books. And like you point out, it's very important to make sure that migrant children do not fall through the cracks of, because this law is for all children universally across the board in the US, regardless of documentation status. I think it's also really important to, as you call for, Celeste, is that there's not in a news, with the one thing about the cycle of information in a multimedia, and in particular in a social media landscape, is that there are all of these stories in the news cycle, and they're all set up or throughout social media that grab our attention. But the challenge is that we're bombarded with so many of these kinds of stories that it may go viral, and that lasts for literally 15 minutes. You remember the 50, and then the next scandal or story has pushed whatever the previous one out of the news cycle. And so raising awareness of this is absolutely critical. And I do want to show where I'm not sure if it's in this class or last semester's, where I've actually integrated a mini unit and I'm not sure if it's this class or a different one, on child labor. And I actually referenced the article from Heather Meyer from the New York Times that you were talking about. And again, I'm not sure if it's this, which class it is, but I'm definitely going to go back to continuing to raise awareness around this, and then also obviously making sure that it's an option that's included on the list, if it's not already, of the topics that future classes are able to cover for the presentation. So that closes out our presentations for this semester. Thank you all. It was quite a range of topics, really key issues, lots of really highly effective, also and highly informative incorporation of data, of statistics, of infographics, and also of the impact of your own firsthand lived experiences around these topics, and of recognizing that the reason why there's any forward movement or change at all is always first because of raising awareness around these topics, and obviously all of the different forms of activism around these different causes. So what we're going to do to introduce and segue into the next unit in Top Hat, in the next reading, which is specifically, we're looking at the different kinds of issues, right, and changes that are being called for in 20th and 21st century student activism. And so we're going to look at contemporary student activism with this next unit in Si Se Pudo, is specifically around the rally for Chicanx and Latinx studies at UCLA specifically. And I want us to also, in addition to looking at this activism from in the early 90s, to look at more contemporary student activism, especially when it comes to Latinx student activism. And so today we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into a contemporary issue of Latinx student activism, is around the defenders of DACA. And so with this activity, we are going to go into, I want to give a little bit of background. Some of you may be familiar with this, may be directly impacted by this. I've been teaching about DACA for years now in my ethnic studies classes, not only here at Stan State, but also when I was in Arizona. And so we're going to do a little bit, I want us to, see a little bit of background when it comes to DACA, and it's short for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And I'm going to get out of the full slide because there's so much information on this slide that let me just get so that we can see all of it. So of course, it's an acronym for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's a policy that protects, at the time that it was instituted or passed, around 800,000 young people. What we mean by young people is anyone younger than 18. Nationwide, regardless, we know that different states have different ages for age of consent when it comes to sex, right? But universally in the US, federally, anyone who is younger than 18 is considered a child or a minor. So in reference to Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, we're talking about anyone younger than 18 who migrated over either individually or with their families. But again, because the rationale for this politically was that a child or a teen under the age of 18 is not able to give consent or able to exercise a choice when it comes to migrating or immigrating to the US, period. And so even if it's considered, quote unquote, illegal immigration or migration, that children have no say in that. And so there needs to be a program that's set up that actually provides some kind of way to support children once they are here in the US. And so now with DACA in particular, because of all of the anti-immigrant, it's called nativism. It's just the current day nativism version. I mean, there's always been a huge backlash against immigrants in the US. Since its inception, this program does not grant children who migrated to the United States, quote unquote, unlawfully. It doesn't grant them official legal status or a pathway to citizenship, but DACA does allow them to apply for a driver's license, social security number, and work permit. And then in California, there's been further legislation, for example, to provide free healthcare, and other kinds of really important universal human rights for those who are classified as undocumented of any age. Now, during President Trump's first term in office, he tried to dismantle this program, which was established by former President Barack Obama in 2012. And so there was a lot of activity at the Supreme Court level when it came to dismantling DACA. I remember at this time when throughout the CSU system and at Stan State specifically, we were being sent emails about the status of these rulings. And now in 2020, December, the end of 2020, a judge did rule that first time DACA applicants were permitted to apply. This was after the Trump administration preemptively and prematurely stopped accepting new application. And this judge also extended the renewal period to 2 years from 1 year. In October of 2020, the Biden administration's final DACA rule went into effect, and I can enlarge the screen. And this was after a federal judge ruled that the program could temporarily continue. This was in 2022, but new applicants would be banned or barred from applying. As of last year, no date had been set for additional hearings to confirm DACA's future long-term status. So there's a lot of back and forth. Here are some links where I also, with court decisions and updates, if you would like to do a deeper dive into, and this is actually where you can actually file, individuals can file the actual applications. And let me go here. Here's another link that goes into more explanation and where I got this information. And of course, a lot is going to be hinging on the next presidential election. A lot. So I also have some other updates here because there's just a lot of, this is a very dynamic ongoing process, and in terms of not only DACA, but also the DREAM Act, which is short for Development, Relief, and Education. And again, for alien minors. Now, human beings are not aliens. It's completely dehumanizing. And unfortunately, this is literally, this language is codified into law, including current contemporary law. So that's right. That's a part, that's a key part, that's a root cause of dehumanization of individuals and whole groups of human beings. Absolutely starts with language and is reinforced with language. It is ironic because individuals who fall under this act are called dreamers, which is right, much more humanizing, and yet it is what it is. So here's another link, Dreamers by the Numbers. So much. And I do want to stress that in 2023, it's being called the Bipartisan DREAM Act. It is bipartisan. And it would establish a pathway to citizenship for certain. And again, this article uses the language of undocumented, which is individuals without the actual paperwork. And I will tell you, versus aliens, right? Undocumented is more accurate. Now, I will tell you, there are a lot of international faculty at Stan State. And one of the faculty members, we only have one faculty member in ethnic studies who is actually from another country. And that is Dr. Goshu Tefera. And it has been almost 2 years, and he is still completely in limbo. Even like being sponsored by the largest 4-year public university system in the US, he still does not have the documentation status that he needs. And it's been 2 years. 2 years. There are so many barriers when we talk about even a pathway to just even acquiring a green card, for example. So there's a lot of information here. You will have an opportunity once I share the link to the activity deck to save it, to look into this topic more. What you're going to be doing based on the link here, the very first link to this article is about contemporary student activism. And when I say it's contemporary Latinx student activism, obviously it goes beyond students, and it also includes a cross-section of individuals and groups from a variety of backgrounds. But again, this is a primary contemporary cause for contemporary Latinx student activism. And we're going to focus in particular on student walkouts as a form of activism against the dismantling or the ending of DACA. So, and the reason why DACA is associated with, right, the DREAM Act itself. And so you're going to learn more about that. You'll have an opportunity in your groups to look at some of the footage of these student walkouts, because we're focusing on student activism. And based on this article that you're going to access at the first link here in the third slide in the deck, you're going to answer 5 key questions. And then a discussion question that I want us to really look into. There are so many attacks nationwide at the K through 12 and college and university level against BIPOC students. In here, we're talking about undocumented students. And with anti-immigration in the US, it absolutely is intersected with racist and xenophobic, right, overtones. We've got LGBTQIA plus students being attacked. We've got Black students being attacked. We've got a lot, like, so with lower enrollments and lower birth rates, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Some of you all touched on this with the 4B movement, with women's reproductive rights. They go far beyond and include the right to abort or not, the right to contraceptives, which serve a lot of purposes for health of women, not just in terms of as a pregnancy preventative, but all kinds of hormonal issues of it, like all kinds of different issues impacting women. Birth control and hormones regulate a lot of that, right? All of that is being restricted. So in particular, when it comes to the university and higher education level, we already at Stan State are seeing declining enrollments already. 2 consecutive years at Stan State. The university has had the budget only from student tuition and fees decreased by millions of dollars, millions. And Stan State is likely not going to hit the target enrollment number that the state has set, because this is a state system. And so it is funded by tuition, student tuition and fees, and taxpayer dollars in California. So now what that means is Stan State has already been losing millions of dollars for 2 consecutive years because of lower student enrollment. And it doesn't take much, less than 200. If Stan State is down by even less than 200 students, that equals millions of dollars of lost revenue in tuition and fees. And if Stan State does not hit the enrollment targets or the minimum enrollment number that the state legislature has set, then the state legislature will decrease the amount of taxpayer dollars that are allocated to Stan State. So now you've got the system losing the money on both sides of student tuition and fees, as well as taxpayer dollars, and it all goes back to student enrollment. Universities, K through 12, every institution in this country should be doing everything to support and develop the next generation from a purely selfish and self-interested perspective. But what's happening is the opposite. And it means, I don't know how a society, 80% of which is driven by consumers, by what people buy, not by what people make. From a very, again, just from that perspective alone, the dollars and cents are not adding up. The hoarding of wealth through wealth inequality, billions and billions of taxpayer dollars continuing to be sent to Israel, to Ukraine, to... How could we reallocate? On Wednesday, Congress, signed by President Biden, just sent $25 billion or $26 billion to Israel and to humanitarian efforts in Gaza. That doesn't make sense, but that's right what happened. And then yesterday, the Congress sent another $95 billion to the war in Ukraine, and Israel is also included that, as well as Taiwan. But again, it's just throwing in stuff. It's really, how many billions of dollars is that? 95 plus 26. That's all taxpayer money. What are we doing? We don't need to raise taxes in this country. We need to reallocate how taxpayer money is being spent. But here's a discussion question. And this is also, keep in mind, now let's bring it back to Stan State. Starting in the fall semester, the whole system is going to increase student tuition and fees by 6% every single year until in 5 years, there's an overall 30% increase in student tuition and fees. What's going to happen to enrollment? Does this make sense to you? So the discussion question is, after you read the article and you answer the question, what do you think will happen at universities and colleges with lower enrollments like Stan State? I mean, this is happening nationwide, that are already happening. This is already happening. And that will continue to happen due to lower birth rates, because it's too expensive to have children, because women do not have reproductive rights. So it's having a chilling effect, because there's, right, all of this is lending itself because of systemic issues of racism, of misogyny, of transphobia, of xenophobia. So what do you think will happen with these lower birth rates that are going to continue? Especially with also all of the state and Supreme Court level cases that target Black, Indigenous people of color, and LGBTQIA plus students from attending colleges, from having safe and welcoming environments to be educated in the K through 12 and the higher education system. What do you think is going to happen? So there's no right or wrong answer to that. So what I'm going to do is first give everyone permission to be able to share the slide deck once you go into your small groups. Here is a link to the activity deck. Please everyone click on that so you'll have access to it. And again, I just want to remind you that the 5 questions are coming from this very first link on the instruction slide, which is the 3rd slide in the deck. And there are 4 groups, so I'm going to open up the breakout groups and let you know which group you're going to be working with. So group one, you're going to be working with slide 1 after you access that link to the article. Group 1 is Ebony, Juliet, Nate, Roberto, and Shakara. Group 2 is Amanda, Biblina, Irene, Luke, and Patty. Group 3 is Celeste, Diego, Isabel, and Javier. And group 4 is Alexa, Ani, Kayla, and Shane. And I also want to add, I know that the DREAM Act and the DACA affects more, it's any undocumented children who migrate to the United States under the age of 18 when they migrated. So this does affect obviously more than minors from Latin America. But again, this is the largest number of children migrants who are affected are primarily, from Mexico, Central or South America because of geographic proximity. So it is, whoops, I'll open up the rooms in a minute. Let me go see what, oh, I'm just all over the place with this stuff. Let me make sure. Up here. So it's 1:19. I will give you at least 10 minutes. So we'll reconvene at about 1:30. So I will open up the rooms now. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to wrap up today's class with, I would first recapping the answers to the questions that you found in the article on the widespread walkouts that were taking place in Colorado when the DACA Act was first repealed. And I actually want to, whoops, let me make sure everyone's back. I think everyone's back now. Okay. So before we get into hearing out from just a few individuals on some key points from the discussion that you all had, and again, there's no right or wrong answer to a discussion question. This discussion question, it's meant to take the information, right? To take the data and to reflect upon it and to start thinking really in a critical kind of policy making context or from that perspective. Like the bottom line is how is the US going to even continue to be able to support itself in terms of just like, again, from a purely dollars and cents, right? The most restrictive of perspectives. And even with that, how is the US going to continue to survive if we don't have enough human beings, period, to support all of these institutions to be able to work and to be able to generate enough revenue? Like, who's going to buy all? I mean, regardless of how much wealth inequality there is, right, where it's the math is not mathing. So again, it's meant to be an exercise in critical thinking and reflection. So the first thing I want to do before is, I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to actually look at, this is the second link, second video that was embedded in this article that you read to get those 5 questions answered. But I just want to show, and we know that with K through 12, the reason why high school walkouts continue to be so powerful, they've been used for decades now, is because K through 12 schools get money from the state. They're public schools, which means taxpayer dollars. based on property taxes pay, right, for for public education. It's all based on attendance, not just enrollment, but attendance. Who actually is showing up to the classes, literally bodies in the seats. And so it's very powerful to have any number of students walk out. But I'm going to show just in this one city in Colorado, I believe it's in Denver, to show the power of this, the impacts, right, that this kind of activism has by showing this video clip. And it also gives a little bit, it shows the actual primary source video footage of Jeff Sessions announcing at the White House the ending of DACA at that time.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
So this is just in Denver. I mean, obviously it's a pretty large city, but you're talking about in one city, 7,000 students may have walked out of class. I mean, it would have a huge impact on the K through 12 budget in that city because it's based on attendance, not just enrollment, but attendance. The CSU and Stan State issued similar statements at this time as the University of Colorado, because we do have students who are undocumented within this system and right on our campus. Yeah, just wanted to show you a little bit of what that actually looks like and why student walkouts, especially at the high school level, continue to be utilized as a form of collective organizing and activism. And why this is, right, a key cause of student activism. So thank you all for engaging in this exercise. I'm not going to go over the 5 questions. I just want to look at what some of the groups responded. And group 2, which was Amanda, Biblina, Irene, Luke, Patty, and Patty, said that graduation rates will be lower and there will be less people with bachelor's or education postgraduate, which again, it's not, I believe that this is going to put the US further behind other comparable and even countries that aren't like typically we're compared to, because we're going to need as much education and highly trained individuals in our society, especially to lead when we really shift into a green economy, because we're going to force because of climate change, right? We talk about clean water. We talk about if the planet doesn't eject us first. I mean, this is right, really, really key point here. And then let's see, group 4 made some really key observations. These universities and colleges will receive backlash. I think they will become more hateful environments because I think because they're engaging in very extreme, egregious caste like, right, racist and xenophobic and transphobic and homophobic behavior. Student tuition, which has been increasing, is probably going to continue to increase exponentially. Yes, already fewer people are attending college. And I will tell you, as we thank you for sharing these insights, as we close out today, I have a close friend with whom I work, and they live in Sonora. And think about if you all have children, if you all have siblings, if you all have nieces, nephews, cousins, what is the access to a college education going to look like for them? As Luke, Diego, and Brandon articulated in their presentation on universal healthcare, we're not just talking, I mean, obviously the impact, the current impact is obviously being felt. We're also talking about future generations, and we're talking about the continuation of our society as a whole. So thank you, and I will see you all in class on Tuesday, and we will go into our next unit. Si se pudo, yes we could, and yes they did. Have a good weekend.